Welcome back to episode 5 of the Film Frequency podcast. Today we're going to be talking about TV, so it's more of the TV Frequency podcast today. We're talking about our top shows of 2020 as we slowly make our way into 2021's television outlook. Mark, you've got 6 on the go, don't you? 6 top ones.
Yep, six TV series.
Did you only watch 6 shows last year, or are these just like your top ones that you watched?
No, these are the only six I watched last year, and some of them I didn't even watch all of them. I just finished them off at the start of last year. So,
Yeah, I'm
oh,
the same. I mean, some of my shows are only on season 1. A couple of them were on their final season, and yeah, some of them are finished and some of them are still going. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. But as I said, I could not break it down into like a top 3 or a top 5. And there's a lot of ones that were like number 1 on my list, and then were slowly bumped down as new shows came out in the fall, in the autumn.
yeah, I haven't ranked mine. I'm trying to think, could I rank it? Probably could. It'd probably be easier than the film one, but I don't mind just kind of going. I just went in order of the year, like chronological order.
Oh, I probably should have done that, but yeah. So I'll start, I suppose, saying I have 10 on my list. My number 10 is Truth Seekers, which is on Amazon Video. It stars Nick Frost, Samson Kayo, Emma Darcy, and Malcolm McDowell. So this is actually a show created by Nick Frost and Simon Pegg, who of course were well known for their Cornetto trilogy of Shaun of the Dead and End of the World and Hot Fuzz. Is that the three?
Yep, that
Yeah,
sounds great.
so it's good. It's kind of like they work in like a telecom company, so like across various places in England. However, the Nick Frost character, he has like a side YouTube channel where he's like a truth seeker. So Truth Seekers is the name of his YouTube channel, where he like goes to like haunted places and makes like very low budget videos. And of course, this other guy, Samson Ko, comes on. His character is actually called Elton John. Um, he comes on board and he's like really like, um, I suppose you would call it ghost sensitive. So he like anytime he goes in a haunted place, the ghosts all become like very known. So your man's YouTube channel goes from being like no subscribers to like quite a few people. You know, they're the main ghost hunters in England. It was really good, really funny first season, I have to say. And the ending wasn't the best, but I'm looking forward to see where it goes. And
It's a comedy, is it?
it's a comedy, yeah, it's a comedy, and Simon Pegg is in it as well. He plays like the boss of the telecoms company, and he's not he has a couple of scenes, and then he features more in the last couple of episodes. But no, it's funny. It's a good wee show. I'm looking forward to see where it goes next. I think it's got about 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb.
Is Nick Frost the he's the character Nick Frost's character is the one who has the YouTube channel, and then it blows up because
This other guy, yeah, Elton John.
Elton John,
Elton John.
he's then on the show, is he, or on the YouTube
Oh,
channel?
sorry, he just joined the telecoms company, so he's like an intern almost. It's like his first day.
Okay, and
And they
then how
all
does the YouTube channel take off then?
well basically they start nearly everywhere they go to install broadband. It turns
Uh-huh.
out there's like ghosts in and around the place. And there's also this other girl, Emma Darcy. Her character comes into it, and she's like has a history with ghosts as well. So it's almost like they stumble across a lot of ghosts, and there's a whole like background narrative about this other guy who's trying to like go to an alternate dimension. It's very strange, very like X Files, but like a comedy version of it, I suppose.
Okay,
It was interesting.
interesting. Is this their first show that they've then made, like first sitcom that Simon Pegg and Nick Frost have made?
Well, they made Spaced back in the 90s. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
No, I haven't. So this is
Spaced.
before the Cornell trilogy.
Yeah, so this is like their their first really big thing. I'm not quite sure if it was on Channel 4 or BBC. It was definitely on TV, but it was kind of nerds renting a flat in England and the kind of what went on with their neighbors and stuff. It was a brilliant show, very strange,
Probably where
but
they actually met, maybe,
yeah, it could be actually, yeah,
and
yeah.
where they kind of joined forces at that point.
But yeah, Truth Seekers on Amazon Prime, it's good.
But yeah, I mean, it's starting off, and if it's a good first season, that's enough. I find a lot of first seasons just need to be good.
Yeah,
They don't need to be amazing for them to, as long as you've like a steady start.
True. My second, so coming in at number 9 on my top 10 list, His Dark Materials season 2. So it's the one I finished probably most recently. Season 2 came out in November there. It stars Daphne Keane, who of course was in the Logan film as X2, kind of the new Wolverine. It also stars Ruth Wilson, who was in Luther most famously. Lin-Manuel Miranda, known for Hamilton, he pops up in it, as does Andrew Scott and James McAvoy. Both have James McAvoy's role is quite small, and Andrew
I was about
Scott.
to say I haven't seen him in any of the marketing for season two. I don't know if that's a spoiler or not. I'll not go down that route.
No, he doesn't make an, an appearance at all. So I think he's going to be probably back. Oh no, sorry, that's a lie. He was in the final scene. Um, so I think he's going to be a big part in season 3. They actually did kill off quite a few of the main characters in the last episode, which I was
Oh,
very
really?
surprised about.
Okay. I
Um,
like that. I like that they're shows that take risks, play, killing off big characters.
yeah, so it's based on Philip Pullman's. Is it the what do you call His Dark Materials is the name of the series, I believe. Of course,
Yes.
we got the Golden Compass film in the
Is
early
the book
2000s.
called His Dark Materials or the
I
franchise?
believe so. Yeah, I think the trilogy is called His Dark Materials, and then the 3 books have their own separate names.
Okay.
Through the day. So this was very much a season. It was very much your two towers. You know, you're kind of. It's a lot of build up for what's going to happen in the third season. I think
Right, gotcha. So each season is one of the books.
one of the
Cause
books, yeah,
one of the
which is
books.
interesting. But no, very good show. If you like your sci-fi, you like your fantasy, jumping between their it jumps between their world and like our world, and it's an interesting show. And the CGI with the demons are kind of their little. They're like pets, so everyone has like a demon which can like transform into
Yes, I
different
remember
animals.
that bit from the Golden Compass. Yeah, there was a lot of animals about, and they had like this bond with the human, isn't that right? Or their owner.
Yeah, the bond with human. And if the demon, any pain that the demon feels, the human feels, and vice versa.
Right. Is there a superpower linked to that? No.
And no, no. So it's I do believe the demons are able to transform into any animal up until uh, the children hit puberty, I believe, or they hit 18. At a certain time, the demons stop transforming and they're stuck in one form.
Okay.
I presume the book goes into more detail as to why that is, but they don't really.
Suck if you were stuck with certain animals, like.
Yeah, some people have like little ferrets and stuff, while some people have like cheetahs.
Yeah. I'd be stuck with a spider, knowing my luck.
Oh, that'd be the one. Um,
Yeah. It does look interesting. What's the CGI like and the visuals? Because I imagine this needs to be quite heavy with CGI. Do you
yeah,
have
the CGI is great. I heard one of the producers talking on the radio about their CGI budget. So basically, once they had planned the whole show, they were kind of saying, right, we can get like 20 seconds of a demon here, but then in the next episode, you can only have like 5 seconds here. So although it's quite a big budget BBC show, they had to pick and choose when they can use their CGI because it is so CGI heavy, I suppose.
Yeah, that
It's a,
sounds like you often think like how the more and more I hear about things of how TV shows are made and films are made, there's so much constraint that happens with the filmmaker between budgets, between visions, between like for example, being told that basically has to shape your script for that episode as to how much you can have of certain characters in the episode,
yeah,
and it kind of has to fit naturally. You can't just have them come in and out, otherwise it will it'll be really obvious to the viewer.
yeah.
It's really tough, that sort of thing. But yeah, because it's on HBO, but it's also on the BBC. Is it like a
It's like
co-produced?
it's co-productions for as far as I know. Yeah, between the two.
Never really heard of that. I've never heard, certainly not HBO and BBC being the. I
True,
haven't heard.
unless BBC were just the ones distributing it in the UK, possibly.
Could be that actually. You're right because we don't have HBO Max yet.
However,
Uh,
normally that's Sky Atlantic when in the
oh
UK.
yeah, but it's
They,
not on Sky. Don't know how that works.
okay, sure.
What's Daphne King like, by the way, Corey?
Very
You know?
good. I think she's gotten much better in the second season. I think as she's grown older. She was very good in. I mean, I liked her in Logan.
Yeah, I really liked
And
her in
she's
that as
kind
well.
of coming into her own. And I think I said to my dad who I watch it with, it's quite a lot for her to carry this whole show as the main character and also being only like I think she's 14 or 15, but she does a really strong job of it. I have to say.
Yeah, she definitely seemed like a very strong young actress
Mm.
in Logan. But then she has so few words in it, and the focus is still Logan in that film. So I'm intrigued to see what she's like being the center stage of this show.
Yeah,
Um,
no,
can't
she's
even really remember how she talked in Logan. There's so many. She acted a lot through her face rather than. Can't even remember what her voice is like.
was she like was her mother not Mexican in Logan?
Oh yeah, she wasn't English.
Yeah, so did she speak English? Can't even
Oh,
remember.
good point. It was on TV the other night, but it was a scene where she didn't speak. It was her just kicking butt.
Yeah, funny. I actually found out one of the main bad guy in it, the Magisterium, or the name of the bad guy. So kind of like the Sith in Star Wars. There's a lot of like black capes and daunting scenery when they're about. But the leader of the bad guy is actually played by Will Keane, who's Daphne Keane's dad in real life. Did not know that until the second season. It's quite
Okay,
interesting.
so
So
he's an actor, is he?
yeah, he's an actor as well. So I don't even know if they probably haven't had any scenes together yet, but might be interesting to see if they come together. Once you see it, you can definitely like they look related, if you know what
Yes,
I mean.
I've just seen a picture of Wilkin, and you can kind of see it now that you've said it.
Yeah,
That's his daughter. Yeah, is she from England?
yeah,
Daphne?
yeah. I believe so.
Know that? I thought she was American. Fair enough.
So, what's your first TV show of the day?
So my first TV show was a show that I wrapped up in February time, and that was The Sopranos. I had only, I think, a season to watch left. I think season 5 in 2020, and I'd been watching it through about half. It took a while with it back in when I started it in 2019. So The Sopranos, I enjoyed it. It would probably be, if I was to rank this list of TV shows, this would be near the very bottom though for me. I was expecting to like it more, given that there's so much hype behind it. The Sopranos was kind of meant to be the bridge, one of those films that kind of bridged television into the golden age. It kind of started it all off.
Mm.
And maybe it's because we've just been spoiled for choice since, and maybe that's why, at the time, maybe because the quality wasn't that strong, that Sopranos really kind of piqued people's interest. But I was a fan of it. It was enjoyable to watch. Otherwise, I wouldn't have finished it. But it's certainly not edge of your seat TV. It's not like you're wanting to binge it or you're wanting to see what happens next for most of the show. However, it's very grounded instead. It's very much like it feels like it's a very well lived in world. Nothing preposterous or kind of radical happens where you think, that's just ridiculous. Um, as I'm sure everyone kind of knows with The Sopranos, it follows a mafia family in America, and Tony Soprano's the main character, who's the mob boss. They're the mafia's boss. Um, I thought it got better as the seasons went on when I got more invested in the characters, and I think my favorite season was actually the very final one, where. And I think the reason why is because in the final one they focus more on the family than they do on the mafia crimes. Whereas in the earlier seasons, there's a lot of the season dedicated to just the crimes that are going on and the hits that they're preparing. And I think that the heart of it is with the family, because with Carmela, the wife, Christopher, the nephew, even Dr. Melfi, who's the psychiatrist, and Meadow and AJ, the daughter and the son. Um, I thought the ending also was quite good. So have you heard much about the ending of Sopranos?
Is the Sopranos the one that has the ending where people love the whole series, but they're not very happy with how it ended?
Yeah, well, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag with the ending from what I've heard. So some people liked it, some people didn't. I might be wrong in saying this, but it seems like over time, if you let it linger longer, people seem to come round to it more.
Mm.
And it seems to have kind of aged well, the ending, at least to the initial reaction. And I can see why it certainly had that controversial opinion on for people. It ends quite abruptly, and there are hints that are placed throughout the episode as to what happens after it ends abruptly. Um, and I actually, the more time I spent thinking about it, I really liked it. Initially, you get this whiplash effect of like, whoa, that's it. And then, as time goes on, you start to think it through, and it's one where you ponder and you kind of think through, oh, that happened earlier and that happened, maybe that, so it's there for up for debate. I think Alan Ball created the series, didn't they? No, David Chase, sorry. And I think that's what he said in interviews. It's there for open to interpretation, but there's enough hints that are laid there for you to kind of debate it as to which side or what happened next, basically. So I really like that. Also, did you hear the song the infamous song that it ended on?
Not quite sure. Don't think so.
No, so it's "Don't Stop Believing," which I would never have guessed would have been the final song of The Sopranos or any mafia-based show.
I suppose ever since Glee, that song's become like a comedy. You only associate it with kind of like it's just a bit of a comedy song, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, which I mean, obviously it wasn't played for that effect at all in the show. It did seem like it was kind of out there, and I was like, does this work? Given that I think Glee came out after this. I think, oh no, wait, did it? Yeah, I think Glee came out after this, so this would have been first of all. But and therefore, me watching it, having seen what the film, what the songs become, it kind of felt a bit jarring. But I think it worked in the end. I think it did work. But it was interesting to see that.
Have you seen all the kind of Scorsese mafia films? And if you have, is it like that except in TV show form?
Yes. So I've watched Goodfellas, and I've seen The Irishman last year. I don't think I've seen Casino. But I mean, Goodfellas is meant to be like the gold standard of mafia, and I would agree it is quite like that. And I think part of the reason why I didn't like The Sopranos as much as a lot of people do is the mafia thing. It just doesn't do it for me that much. Goodfellas, for example, I thought was a good film, but I don't think it deserves to be one of the put in there with the elite of films. And I think it just comes down to the mafia. I don't think the genre is really my full cup of tea.
Yeah.
But you're right, it is quite similar to, if you like the Goodfellas and you like the Irishman, you like any mafia stuff, Sopranos is definitely for you.
Interesting. And how many seasons is it?
5 seasons. I think the last one's a bit longer. And I think each one, how many episodes is there? 86 episodes in total. So it is a long haul sort of thing. But if you've loads of free time for it as well, it's, kind of sit back, relax and watch it. It's not edge of your seat stuff. And probably the pandemic and lockdown's probably a good time for the likes of The Sopranos, if you haven't seen it.
Very good. So will I go on with my next two?
Yeah, go ahead.
So coming in number 8 is End of the Fucking World. So this is a BBC show, I believe. I keep saying this and probably isn't.
It's Netflix as well, I think.
Netflix as well. So BBC. This is definitely something where I need to find out whether it's distributed by such a place. But it was definitely shown. The first season was definitely shown on BBC. It stars Jessica Barden and Alex Lawther. They're kind of, I think they both meet in school. Alex's character is, let me just check his name here. Alex's character, he plays James, and he's a sociopath. So the whole series is based on, and this is something that some filmmakers, I believe, completely revere, and some people, accept it. But it's all done through voiceover of their own thoughts. So every single episode, without doubt, will have, or every single scene will have the thoughts of the character played out. So it's kind of like most of the spoken conversations are pretty short, whereas you really find out what both characters are thinking through the voiceover of their thoughts, which is kind of strange. So you kind of find out that James's character is a sociopath. So he started dating Alyssa, Jessica Barden's
Definitely
character.
looks like that. That what's his name again? Alex Lawther.
Yeah.
It's that face, sociopaths and psychopaths, and he played basically that in Black Mirror as well, didn't he? He just has that look about him.
So yeah, Alyssa's character, she's kind of a bit odd as well. But in the first season, they both go on the run. They murder someone, so it's a lot about kind of them coming to terms with who they've killed. And the second season, so I wasn't quite sure how the second season was going to play out. So it introduces a character called Bonnie, played by Naomi Aki. And if you will have known Naomi from, she was in the last Star Wars film as the one of the stormtroopers that Finn comes into contact with on
Okay.
the. I'm not quite sure what her character was called in Star Wars, but she plays a really good character. She plays Bonnie, who was the girlfriend of this professor who the main two killed in the first season. So she's kind of coming on a rampage revenge mission to kill James and Alyssa. Um, the second season is mostly about that. So it is once again a lot of stuff happening from their own point of view within their own head. But a really good season. Great music, great cinematography. It's beautifully shot. It really only features these two characters, and they both played fantastically. It's very short. Every episode's only like 20 to, I think every episode's actually 18 to 22 minutes long.
Okay,
You,
short.
you could
Yeah.
finish these two seasons in 2 days if you wanted.
Do they so is it to do with the end of the world?
Nothing to do with the end of the world. There's no sci-fi element to it whatsoever.
Okay.
And I'm actually not quite sure why it's called that.
So
Uh,
it's generally the second season, this revenge plot, because I've only ever seen marketing of him and her in the car
yeah.
driving somewhere. If that makes sense.
So
That's
yeah,
the only bit that I've got. So they're kind of running away from
from the authorities and from their family. So the
right.
small spoiler at the end of the first season, they are caught, but at the end of at the start of the second season, um, James is now out of prison, but the two characters, James and Lissa, aren't together, so they're not talking to each other. So it's kind of about them coming back together, and also the collision course with this character Bonnie, and how all three of them are going to come together. Um, and see how it ends up. But it's a great end. I think the 2 seasons perfect that they just kept it at 2 seasons. That's it finished with, and it's only 16 episodes, so
Yeah.
definitely worth the watch.
Surprising that they left it at 2 seasons, but if that suits, I'd rather shows do that and showrunners do that. End it if it's the right time for it to end story wise.
So speaking of another series that this one only had 1 season. My number seven is Normal People. So it was the big kind of show at the start of the year. I think it came out in January, but I only watched it during lockdown in March, April. So it's the Irish show starring Daisy Edgar Jones and Paul Mescal. It's based on a Sally Rooney novel. It's kind of just about these two characters who are in a romantic relationship. They're friends, and it kind of jumps from their kind of end of school all the way through university, and then their life just slightly after university. So it's 8 episodes. Each episode kind of jumps from a different time period, which is kind of interesting. Very, very R-rated, very emotional. Kind of runs through the two characters, their family problems, their own mental health issues. It's based in Sligo, which is their kind of hometown, and also in Dublin, where they go to university.
I,
Um,
I actually my parents were watching this very recently and I walked in and it was the middle of a sex scene and I walked out very, very quickly. Knowing about it being normal people. Reputation that it's built up for that.
it is very. I mean, it is very R-rated. I'm just imagining your parents watching that. That's hilarious.
Does it fall into the trap? My question is, does it fall into a similar trap as 50 Shades of Grey, where it was like a lot of like sensualness and sexual frustrations, and then but no character basically?
No, not at all. I do think the sex. I think I mean, on social media and stuff, people were playing up the sexual aspect of it, but it is only a small section of the show, I have to say. I mean, neither of the characters are defined by their desires to have sex.
Right, so that they're
Yeah,
well fleshed out characters, like
yeah,
the
yeah.
actual.
By no means does the show anything to do with just their sexual relationship. It does come into play, in, especially the two characters, and how they both feel differently regarding sex and stuff. But a lot of it plays into like mental health and feelings of anxiety and stuff within relationships. Two characters who have very different outlooks on life and kind of where they want to go in the world. It is very much. It's hard to say because I don't want to speak for everyone who ever went to university, but I thought it was a very good interpretation of university life and those friendships and relationships that you build in university. Personally speaking, now I have to say.
Mhm.
So yeah, 100%. Great show. It's on. Should be on 4OD.
BBC.
I believe it was a Channel 4 show.
Was it Channel 4? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that was pretty good. So that's my number 7. What have you got next?
My next one is Homeland. Homeland's final season came out this year, and I watched the final season and then decided during the first lockdown, I got my brother into it and decided to rewatch a lot of the first 7 seasons with him. So I basically binge watched the whole thing again. Um, and yeah, I mean, obviously, it's been a long time coming. It's been a lot of people watch the first 2 seasons, which I'm sure people are thinking, is that still on that show? It's been, 7 years ago when it started. And I really do think this is one that kind of fell under the radar. It's one of those weird, um, the conversation around it, it's had a weird journey that many shows don't have, which is that it started with such buzz and everyone was watching it the first 2 seasons. And then it just dropped off after that because one of the major characters, spoiler guys, if anyone's listening, one of the major characters dies. And clearly a lot of audience members were left with that character as well, which is a real shame because there were some really strong seasons that came up after that. And I think a lot of people jumped off the bus too early with the show. It had a really good ending. I think it had probably the best ending it could have had. And it only had a couple of weaker seasons. Season 3, I would say, and season 5 weren't so strong, which I think after season 3, where the major character goes, I think that's when people left because of that. But there's some really, really strong later seasons. Like I think season 4 and 7 were particularly really, really strong, and 8 even was good as well. So if I would definitely encourage people, if you started with it and you like the first few seasons, keep with it because there's some really good stuff that you missed out on. They introduce, for example, one of my favorite characters I've ever had on TV. The guy was called Quinn, and he's Corey's heard me talk about this guy probably too much. He's played by an English actor called Rupert Friend. Did I ever tell you actually, Corey? He also has great taste, this man, in women.
Oh,
Keira Knightley's exes. So that makes me like him even more. For anyone who doesn't know, I have a big crush on Keira Knightley. And
he looks like one of the photos I'm looking at. He looks like Legolas. What do you call it? Legolas out of thingy.
Orlando Bloom. Okay.
What's the photograph I'm looking at? The
Are
specific.
you looking at the IMDb one?
No, it's BBC America. It was the first image that came up with him. Or maybe now that I say that, I completely retract that. Orlando Bloom.
A less douchebag Orlando Bloom, maybe.
Yeah.
I think Orlando Bloom, I don't know, there's some cockiness about him I don't quite like. But yeah, this guy, I was like, he should be in more things. He's a great character, very conflicted secret agent in the show. And I really was kind of one of the big believers in, they kind of played with this like complicated relationship between him and the main character, Kerry, who's played by Claire Danes. She's the main character in the show, and she does an excellent job. Really interesting character as well because she has bipolar disorder, and she's so good. If you want to see a really good representation of bipolar disorder, go to Homeland. And yeah, they have a really conflicted relationship, her and Quinn. And yeah, I'll not go any further than that, but definitely give that a go. I also Homeland is excellent for being realistic with actual current climates in politics and things. There was a lot of things that Homeland included, especially in the later seasons, that actually happened in politics and in war. And for example, even certain drone attacks and like repercussions of those, they actually almost put it on the actual season before it just happened in real life. So they had a really good pulse on society as a whole, kind of. And apparently what they did as well, I read a few interviews, they actually talked to ex-chief CIA executives to ask a bit of, obviously they couldn't go into too much detail on actually what they were investigating, but they gave them a good idea as to what current problems were on a global scale, which they used in their storylines. I would actually, given what's just happened in the US, I was saying to my mum tonight, I would love to see, if Homeland hadn't finished, I would love to see how they used that in the show in another shape or form.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you'd probably watch that on a show, what happened tonight with the Capitol being overrun, and go, that's unrealistic. That would never happen. So certainly, America's providing great storylines for Hollywood at the moment.
Yeah, speaking of a series that uses real life events, I don't know if you ever watched it, but there was an Aaron Sorkin show back in 2012 to 2014 called The Newsroom. It starred Jeff Daniels.
I've heard of that.
It was fantastic because there's a couple of scenes they covered. The news stories that they described in the show actually happened in real life, and there's some fantastic scenes in that where they were covering real life stories. And these kind of a lot of things in newsrooms where whoever breaks it first, you sometimes don't want to be. You sometimes want to be the one that breaks it first, but then at the same time, if your facts are wrong, then you might be discredited as a news agency. And there was this. I don't know if you remember. There was this one moment when a U.S. Senate, I think it was U.S. senator, was shot um, when she was out. She was out uh, doing some events, and she was shot, and I think it was CNN or someone had confirmed that she had died, and they actually recreated this bit in the show, and they were kind of saying, "Do we break this news because we have not got 100% confirmation that this woman is dead or not?" And it was this very like intense emotional moment. They actually used the Coldplay's "Fix You" for the scene. It was heightened emotions to the maximum. And it turned out the senator actually wasn't dead. She was in a coma and she made a full recovery in real life.
Wow.
And it's fantastic. One of my favorite scenes in television. It was just I know using Coldplay's "Fix You" is kind of like you get a friggin' free hit at emotion, but it was fantastically filmed. Aaron Sorkin's dialogue in the scenes is brilliant. The first episode opens with this like 8 minute monologue from Jeff Daniels' character on like politics and the state of America. This was back in 2012. I would love to have seen them do this kind of show now, because after the political upheaval in the last
Yes.
4 years in New York, it would be fantastic. But
There's so much to be said, yeah, to dig deep on. Aaron Sorkin's done. I know he's a big screenwriter, isn't he? He did A Few Good Men that I watched over lockdown, and it was a very, very good script. He's very good for scripts, and The Social Network.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm interested in that actually. How many seasons was there of the Newsroom?
2 seasons. It was an HBO show, so I think they give it kind of a short run.
Okay.
Show, yeah.
Maybe give it a go because it won loads of awards, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Homeland. If I was ranking this would be near one of the top. It's certainly, I would say, in my top 6 or 7 shows of all time. I think Homeland. And I think it's a disappointment that it's been underappreciated given its strong start. And if you did start it and you liked it, keep going with it. It's very, very good. And that's my second one.
So you've got 4 left.
Yes, 4 left.
I've got 6 left. So yeah, I'll do another 2. Sure. My next one is Legion, which was an FX show. It ran for 3 seasons. Created by Noah Hawley, who of course did Fargo. It stars Dan Stevens, Rachel Keller, Aubrey Plaza. It's basically about Professor X, Charles Xavier's son, and David Haller, who is he's diagnosed with schizophrenia. He's in a mental institution. He discovers he has special powers similar to any other X-Men series. Really fantastically done. It's strange to say the word grounded because it's to do with mutants and science fiction, comic book stuff. But it is very grounded, but at the same time, because most of it happens within his own head, it's very eclectic at the same time. There's a lot of strange, weird stuff happens. So you really have to suspend your disbelief, I think, with Legion. But I suppose the same way you do with any comic book series. It's fantastically made because it's to do with schizophrenia. It's to do with all like to do with the psyche. Noah Hawley has free range to kind of make it as crazy and mental as
He
possible.
wants, yeah, it sounds like a director's dream, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I mean, visually it's fantastic. CGI is wonderful. There's some pretty decent fight scenes. I would have to say the action isn't the main part of it. So if you're going into this expecting the kind of like the way the X-Men have always got missions to do, etc., there is organizations where there are mutants being part of it, but it's mostly about the main character and his he has essentially the same power as Professor X. And in the third season, they actually bring in Professor X as a character. So it's his younger self. It's not. It's way before he creates the Xavier School for the gifted. And he's not in a wheelchair or anything, so he's just like a young man. And David's character goes back in time using his. He comes across another mutant that has time travel abilities, so he goes back in time and tries to kind of fix all the problems that have went wrong with his life. It's basically between the main villain of the show is this guy called the Shadow King, who kind of infects David's mind and kind of turns him a bit evil. But I think the third season, the main kind of issue with it was talking about whether this guy David is truly evil. So whether our protagonist is actually the antagonist of the show, and then the things that he's doing are his own doing. So he spends most of his life blaming this Shadow King, this evil entity that was in his head. But at the end of the day, it might actually be the fact that he himself is just a bad person, if you know what I mean. So it was very interesting the way they summed it up, because he really wasn't the protagonist by the end of it.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting. You don't really hear that much in TV or film
Yeah.
being used, where you kind of turn. It's not even that you're turning the protagonist into an antagonist. It's almost that the protagonist was the antagonist,
The whole
but
time.
you're seeing it from the antagonist point of view. Of course, they think they're the hero as well. That's kind of cool. That's interesting.
Yeah, very great cast. Some I watched the first season and then didn't return to season two and three until over lockdown. So I'd watched the first season back in 2017 when it was out, and I haven't actually returned it until 2020. So I think the second season was probably the best. Third season has some mental scenes where like they have like I don't know, psychokinetic battles within their own heads and with all these random musical scores where they're singing along to it and stuff. If you like crazy, weird shit and you like your Marvel stuff, it's like a wet dream, if you know what I mean. Um,
Sounds like a birth, an adopted child from Twin Peaks.
yeah. So my number five was was my number one for most of the year, and that was Alex Garland's show Devs. Um,
Yes.
So it didn't get the it got okay reviews. I think it was a little bit too artsy for television. So it's
I could
very
almost guess you're going to say that as its
yeah
downfall, because
because
that's generally people's problems with his films. I
films.
don't think they're too artsy, but
Hmm.
I can see that being the criticism. Yeah, what's it about?
So it kind of deals with a company called Amaya, which is essentially Google, run by Nick Offerman is kind of one of the main characters. He plays your kind of Mark Zuckerberg, Tim Cook at Apple. He's the kind of head honcho for this what do you call it, in the Silicon Valley in San Francisco. So it's all set in San Francisco, and he runs this kind of Google. Who they have a development division called Devs, and basically they've created quantum computing. So they're trying to like make the strongest computers in the world so that they can actually recreate what's happened in the past. So that a computer that's so powerful that it can look back into the past and see everything that's went on. So essentially making themselves gods. Um,
Right. Okay.
and the whole series is about Nick Offerman. His daughter, his young daughter, gets hit by a car and is killed. So he's trying to relive the memories, and he's trying to see if he's able to somehow go into like an alternate reality and where his daughter doesn't die. Basically, they're trying to get that, things that are unfathomable to humans at the minute, kind of interstellar, kind of the way Interstellar ended, that kind of things that are just too unfathomable for our own mental capacity. But if the
Right.
computer's strong enough, maybe it can do it. However, the main character is played by Sonoya Mizuno. I think I'm pronouncing that properly. She plays Lily Chan. She works at the Amaya as well. However, her boyfriend um, is murdered by the company in the first episode. So the whole series is kind of about her trying to work out whether they killed him, why they killed him, um, and
Is
such.
she the main character, or is she one of the main
He,
characters along with? Is it Nick who
Nick Offerman,
Nick Offer
no,
the main
he's the biggest name part of the show, but he's not the main character. He's kind of like just the boss
of the company?
of the company. But Sonoya Mizuno, Lily, she would be the main character.
Who's the father or mother of the daughter that they're trying to
Oh,
go?
sorry. So Nick Offerman's company killed this guy. What was his name? Sergi was her boyfriend because Sergi was working for another company and trying to get information.
So they
So
killed the guy, her boyfriend, Sonoya's boyfriend, and then oh right, okay.
and she
Oh,
found.
and then what's the daughter bit? Who's did
Oh,
you say?
sorry, Nick Offerman's young daughter. She was like 5 or so. She gets
And that's his goal, is to try and go back to a time when she was alive.
killed. So this kind of supercomputer can see things like Jesus hanging on the cross and like the dinosaurs and stuff.
Right.
It never like fully visually shows you. You know, there's no like CGI or anything. It shows you in almost like particle form, if you can get my drift, kind of like a representation of it. Um, a lot of weird music, very much like his movies. It's very, I would say it's much more like Ex Machina. A lot of very clean clean surfaces, if you know what I mean, kind of strange places. No robot kind of things. Although it is set in the future, it's very much it still looks like present day San Francisco. Yeah, it's a really good show. It's only once again, it's only one season.
So far, so yeah, could
I,
go
I,
some places if
I
it's
think
your number
it did
one
get.
half
I think
of the year.
it only got one season. So the first
Uh,
yeah, I think it wrapped up as one season. I don't think it didn't leave it open.
right, okay, so it did finish.
Oh yeah,
It
actually,
was a
oh yeah,
satisfying
sorry.
ending.
Episode 8, like the way it ended, I think is another thing that would be an issue with a lot of people. It does have the last episode is 8.2, but um, like it definitely like wraps everything up. Like there's no way you could tell another, like anything, you could probably tell another season if you wanted, but it wraps up pretty nicely, I think.
Yeah, because I guess his Ex Machina. I remember what's the one where they're in where it's Natalie what's the film with Natalie Portman?
Annihilation.
Annihilation. Yeah, it leaves it on a cliffhanger, the ending, whereas I thought Ex Machina kind of left it off quite abruptly. And I'm thinking maybe this ending was a wee bit abrupt,
Mm.
or at least the same sort of idea, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, Annihilation was based on a trilogy of books, so I'm very surprised. It mustn't have done well enough to get another two.
Um, yeah, that's interesting. I'm surprised with Alex Garland that it was only picked up by FX or Hulu. He's quite a big name, Alex Garland. For him to come to TV and decide to make his own thing, I thought it would have been picked up by one of the big juggernauts like Netflix or HBO.
Yeah, well, it was shown. I think all the episodes were released on BBC iPlayer in the UK. So that was another thing. I suppose it was good, maybe a good way to get it out to people, but maybe it didn't do very well enough to be picked up by one of the bought by one of the big networks.
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if how BBC iPlayer is even doing in the streaming wars as well, because
Mm.
they're up against some big competition now, whereas BBC iPlayer probably wasn't, 6, 7 years ago. In fact, it definitely wasn't. My third TV series that I watched during last year. So I started with The Sopranos, then moved on to, well, finished Sopranos, went and rewatched Homeland and finished season 8. And then the third one um, is the favorite of all the ones I watched last year. And I think now, because it was that good, I think I need to give it time to see if it justifies this. But I think it deserves to be in my top caliber TV series alongside Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones. But we'll see. I'll give it a year before I put it there, and that is the Netflix TV show Dark. This is easily the best TV show that I've seen on Netflix. Um, it is a time travel show. I've said before on the show that that is my Achilles heel, time travel. But this is time travel done as well as it can be done. It's as if I didn't know any better, it seems like if it's like a Chris Nolan uh, TV series. Basically, if he was to do a TV series, a contained TV series, and it was in German, you have Dark basically. And I think this deserved to explode a lot bigger than it did. I think part of it is because it's in German to begin with. I'd never watched anything other than an English speaking show up until Dark. So I was a bit apprehensive to start watching something in Dark because in German because I'd never done it before and I didn't know if I would follow it as well as you would an English speaking show, but that wasn't a concern whatsoever once you get into it. And I think another thing that holds it back from exploding like it should have, I think, is it does take, you have to really focus when you're watching it. It is complicated time travel, but it kind of rides that fine line between too complicated and too simplified and kind of boring and safe. It like straddles that line perfectly the whole way through the three seasons. And I think season three, it's really kind of almost it's pushing it literally to the brink of kind of like we may topple into this is extremely hard to follow kind of territory, but they do an excellent job. Um, so yeah, really, really loved the show. Um, I would highly recommend it. I was talking to you earlier about it, Corey. I was saying that really you should watch it with someone else. It's that type of show. It's a binge-worthy show as well. It's not something that you would kind of. I'm not a binge watcher at all, but I would definitely say that this is a binge watcher type show because there's a lot of characters. It's about. In fact, I'll tell you the premise first of all. I haven't actually went into the premise. It's about a young boy. It's about a village basically, or a small town set in I think southern Germany around a massive forest and a nuclear power plant, and it's set over three different timelines. There's 33 years in between the three timelines, and um, the main character is called Jonas, and basically through different circumstances, this is really what happens in episode one. A kid goes missing, and then they then discover a way to basically move back in time. And that sounds very corny, but it's so well done, and it seems extremely grounded, as if this does exist in Germany. And then it kind of unravels from there. So you start to see the three timelines in all of season one, and then they bring in a new layer in season two, and then another new layer in season three. And a lot of characters. There's about, I would say, maybe about 10 different characters, more than that actually, probably about 15 different characters, maybe even verging on 20. And not only that, you then have those 20 characters on three different timelines, which then means you've got a lot of different people to kind of keep track of who's who. So it benefits from it's Netflix is the perfect type of platform to put this on as well, because you almost need to binge it, otherwise you'll start to, if you come back to it after a while, you'll lose your spot and you'll kind of go, where was I, who's who? So it is something to kind of keep going with. Plus it helps to pause and kind of maybe talk to someone who's next to you, just to clear up that you're on the right lines and you understand who's who and what's going on, sort of thing. um, and as much as I'm sure some people probably think that's just a head melt, it's a worthy head melt. It's a bit like Inception. Like Inception is a head melt, kind of. Like it's tough enough, you have to follow the film, but it's worth following by the end of it. And this is definitely the same idea. So, and now to be fair, when I said that it's not that popular, they did say there was a, I think there was a Rotten Tomatoes like competition that they were doing with their uh, with the people who are signed up to Rotten Tomatoes, and they were kind of doing like a knockout tournament as to popular TV shows on Netflix, and Dark won it over everything else. It even won it out of, I don't know if it went directly head to head with, did it go head to head with Stranger Things? I think it went head to head with Black Mirror and knocked it out. So I think there is a fan base out there for Dark. It's just I don't think it's big enough, in my personal opinion.
How many
So
how many seasons did it run for?
3 seasons. There's 10 episodes in season one, 8 episodes in season two, and 8 episodes in season three.
Not too bad.
And I kind of want to just mention the creators for this show, because they are definitely ones to watch in the future. I don't think this will be the last time we've heard of them because they wrote and directed the whole thing. They came to Netflix and said, "We have a 3 season storyline that we want to complete." It wasn't like they were wandering in the dark season to season. And excuse the pun, I don't know how I do these puns. They're totally unintentional, but it's almost like I've got a flair for it. So the creators are a guy called, I'm probably mispronouncing this, Baron Bo Odar and Jante Fries, and
Okay.
they're both they're a husband and wife, and they wrote the whole thing. I don't know if they directed it all, but they wrote it all. And after you watch this, you're like, not these kids, these people are geniuses. And he's actually they're in the middle of creating the next show for Netflix, which is called, if I can get this, I think it's 1890 some 1899, which is to do with like immigrants coming over from Europe to America. And I think that's all I know about it so far. But it's definitely one to watch. It'll be coming to Netflix at some point soon.
Very good. Yeah, that sounds good. It's definitely one on my watch list, and I'm interested to see it. Um,
Definitely need to get you to watch this. It's yeah, it deserves a lot of praise.
yeah, so my next one is a little show called Lovecraft Country. And similar to my number five, Devs, Lovecraft Country, when I watched it, was my top show of the year. Um, it stars Jonathan Majors, Journey Smollett, Wimney Musaka. Jonathan Majors, he was in a film called The Last Black Man in San Francisco. I think I mentioned it on an earlier podcast. Journey Smollett was one of the Birds of Prey in the Harley Quinn film. She was like, I think, I'm not quite sure what her character was called, but she was the kind of
I'm looking up the cast now.
is mad. And Wimney Musaku, I saw her before in Luther. She was in Luther, and she was also in End of the Fucking World, which was earlier on my list. She was in the first series. Yeah,
Who's
love
Black
Buffy.
Canary in Birds of Prey? Black Canary, who was like the cop in it.
Mhm. Yeah, they're all great. Lovecraft Country. It's set in the 1950s, I believe, and based all around H.P. Lovecraft's kind of monsters. There is a book called Lovecraft Country, came out a couple of years ago, I believe. Although I think this series takes a different approach to what happens in the book. Set in the 1950s, deals with a lot of racial issues. Of course, was quite prevalent back then. And it's kind of like monsters and witches and spells and all sorts go on. This main character, played by Jonathan Majors, he plays this fantastic name, Atticus Freeman. Um, Basically, his lineage goes all the way back to this kind of group that has like some sort of special powers or whatever. Like bits of it is like very very mystical for a show that is quite grounded, even though it has monsters and stuff in it. Um, but really good, brilliant cinematography. Each episode is really interesting. There's one episode that takes place in I think it's Vietnam, I believe. It's about uh, Atticus's time in the army, and he meets this other this
Is that his father in the army or his own time in the army?
his own time in the army. It was only maybe like 5 or 6 years before the main events of the show. But he meets this other kind of Asian girl who turns out to be this some sort of like sex demon that like a nine-tailed fox, which is this kind of old. Um, I think it's a demon or some sort of ghost from Japanese culture. So yeah, sorry, Japan, not did I say Vietnam? Yeah, I think it's Japan that they go to. But yeah, a lot of interesting episodes. Some great CGI in it. The monsters in it are really. Uh, it doesn't look like TV show monsters, if you know what I mean. I suppose that comes in hand with the HBO budget. Um, But yeah,
Yeah.
another great HBO show, which I hope gets another series. I know the last episode didn't get very well received compared to the previous ones. It seems to be kind of with a lot of shows last year. A lot of big series kind of had a really poor last episode. I know that Raised by Wolves, the new Ridley Scott show, it also had a really like dire last episode as far as I know. But
Right.
it did get picked up for a second season. But I do hope that Lovecraft Country does because it did kind of leave it on a bit of a cliffhanger. There's time travel in it as well. There's one episode with this one of the she isn't the woman isn't even the main character. It's like Atticus's auntie, I think, goes to all these different timelines where she like lives full lives and like becomes like a warrior in like 3000th century and stuff. And it's just wild, wild stuff. And there's Atticus also goes to the future, although we don't see it, and he actually picks up the Lovecraft Country book, which the show's based upon. So it's all very meta in that way. But really cool show, very very interesting, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to see where a lot of these actors go from here. Jonathan Majors, I think he's got a new Netflix film coming out, a Western one, and he's also possibly going to be playing Kang the Conqueror in Ant-Man 3. So he's going to be the main bad guy in that movie. But he's a fantastic actor, wonderful in Last Black Man in San Francisco, and just as good in Lovecraft Country.
I don't think I've actually seen him act at all.
He's
And I
very,
think I've only seen her act
he's
in.
very eclectic. He's not. It's hard to describe him. He's not as serious as a lot of other like new actors. You know, a lot of new actors come about and they might have some really great performance. But I think he's very like his characters are very like. It's hard to. I suppose eclectic's the best word I can describe him. Very out
Okay.
there, very niche, as you might say.
Yeah, yeah. Niche or quirky.
Niche or niche and quirky, I suppose.
Wow, that double top there.
Yes, that's
Uh,
Lovecraft Country.
we
Uh,
were just saying actually earlier on that sounds as if we live with each other from from with these podcasts, as if we're talking before the podcast as well. But um, they a lot of shows, in particular, we were saying about Netflix. A lot of shows get, in our eyes, wrongfully cancelled after a season, and we were saying that really, I think you have to be almost careful when you do cancel a show, after one season, unless it's terrible, because even the best shows that are out there, they never have the like an outstanding first season, generally speaking. Not the ones that manage to keep growing and growing and ending up the legacies that they create.
mhm.
Not to say that the first season's bad of them. It's just it's not quite. It's not certainly blow you away sort of seasons, and therefore I think it can be quite premature to cut a lot of series short by doing that. And I think they need to see the potential that's behind it, and if the creators actually have a really good outline for what's to come, sort of thing.
Mm.
It's like entering like a groove or a nice shoe or something. Yeah, it's like basically putting on a shoe. This is probably a terrible analogy, but putting on a shoe and like the first time you put on a shoe, especially like a hard leather one, it's gonna cause blisters and it's not the best start. But then you get into the groove of it and it feels better.
Yeah.
So that's what I would tell anyone who's having to deal with Netflix management
Oh,
about continuing their show. Use
love
the shoe analogy.
you know. That's fantastic. So, what's your next show?
Okay, my next one is Blood of Zeus,
Mm.
which is a Netflix anime, original anime, and um, it is made by the creators of Castlevania, which was also a Netflix project, an anime project, and again, both shows have kind of went, I think, a little bit under the radar. I certainly don't think they're like outstanding shows, but they're certainly worth watching, especially if you like any sort of anime. It's like an American anime basically, and I think a lot of people see it. We haven't seemed to cross into. I don't think so. Not in Western society having animation for adults really.
Mhm.
When we have animation, it's generally for kids. Yes, you maybe have Pixar where it'll have like some adult themes, but it's for everyone kind of, and
Yeah.
it's still kid worthy kind of. But these animations are really for definitely teenager upwards. There is gore, there is sex, there is violence, um, and um, yeah, it's really really good animation as well. The So Castlevania's got 3 seasons. Blood of Zeus is this is the first season that came out of this show. It's only, I think, 8 episodes, and they're only half an hour long. Um, like any sort of Greek mythology, it's based on another bastard of Zeus's,
Oh,
and it's based on a character called Heron, and it's a fun show. It reminds me, both Blood of Zeus and Castlevania reminded me of how Game of Thrones developed its characters, where you've got all these interweaving plot lines in different areas, and then occasionally they interweave, and also the very grey characters as well, as far as morality is concerned. I thought that they do an excellent job of that. That no one's particularly all perfect and all good, and then you've got this evil big bad guy. Um, and they really blend that really well together. And Blood of Zeus does the same thing. You have Zeus, a very powerful, basically the lead god, um, and yet he has his own flaws. He's not this all powerful being. And then one of the big villains of the show is his wife, which shows, and they blend a really grey character for her, where she's not all good but not all bad, but not all good but not all evil, basically. So yeah, fleshes them out, and I really hope this gets another season.
yeah, I'm sure it will, because a lot of those, I think a lot of those kind of animated shows, if they do even slightly well, they do normally get a good few seasons. Like there's a lot of ones on Netflix. I think there's some sort of something gospel, some sort of animated like wacky show, and I think a lot of the Netflix animated ones, especially the adult ones, tend to go on a good bit. I suppose maybe it's a bit easier to give more season orders to maybe animated shows because maybe they're a bit cheaper to make, possibly.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, you'd think they'd be a bit cheaper.
yeah.
I think they should be. I actually watched one of the YouTubers I follow. She managed to get conversations with the showrunners of Blood of Zeus.
Okay.
So it's really good to see kind of how long the process took for it to get to screen, and like just how many hurdles they had to clear for it, and kind of how they formed the show really.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be good to see another season of it, especially if it ends up developing like Castlevania has, which I think it's got better each season.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll have to give those a go. They're on my watch list. It's funny, like an animated TV show isn't something I'd always quick like. I wouldn't be my first one to go for. I'd maybe watch an episode of Seinfeld or some sort of The Office or something like that. But yeah, I'll have to give them a go because I'm sure there's quite a bit of action in them as well, wouldn't you, mate?
Yeah, the action's really well done as well. The animation's excellent. They yeah, for someone who's such a big fan of Japanese anime, I think you'd really really like this
Yeah,
story. Probably even more. It's probably up your street more than it is mine.
yeah, I'll have to give them a go.
Hmm.
Okay, my next show is Upload. So I'm not sure if you heard of this one. It's on Amazon Video, I believe. Created by Greg Daniels. He's the guy who brought The Office to the US. He also was the creator of Parks and Recreations. So he's got quite a good backlog. I'm going to read the IMDb description because if I try to describe this series, I'll probably get mixed up. So it's a man is able to choose his own afterlife after his untimely death by having his consciousness uploaded into a virtual world. As he gets used to his new life and befriends his angel, that's his real world handler, and questions about his death arise. So it stars Robbie Amell. He looks kind of like Nate from Uncharted, and I think I mentioned earlier that I think he should have been playing Nate in this film, but we'll not talk anymore about that. He plays Nathan Brown in the show, the guy who's died under questionable circumstances and has now been uploaded to this kind of virtual world. The
I've
vir-
seen him in other stuff actually. The Netflix, is it Netflix? I've seen him in like kind of like teen rom coms, I think, before.
yeah,
See.
he's very funny. I think his character's great. He kind of like his character like his character knows he's good looking and like knows he's a bit of a hunk, but he kind of plays on that, if you know what I mean. Like it's not
Okay.
like he's not like I'm trying to, a lot of like these kind of good looking guys can be just kind of douchey characters. I suppose maybe the way he is in the teen rom coms, but he's
Hmm.
very funny. He's very likable. A very likable character in the show. So he befriends his angel, which is kind of his real world handler. So this is the woman who's kind of looking after his life in the afterlife, I suppose. She kind of helps him with any issues he has. She's played by Andy Allo, a girl called Andy Allo. Her character's called Nora. So it's kind of about them two befriending each other as he kind of lives his new life in this hotel afterlife kind of place, which has all of its own issues and kind of glitches within the hotel. It's set in the future. Very interesting. Great show.
Sounds like a really interesting premise.
Yeah, I mean it's a comedy. Got a good bit of romance in there, a good bit of heart. There's it's really good. And if you like kind of sci-fi, kind of futuristic possibilities, it doesn't go super far in the future, so it's like near future stuff. It's always fun to watch. You know what they're doing with drones, what they're doing with VR. So a lot of the series takes place with characters using VR, and there's like VR bodysuits and stuff, so people can like be people in the real world, if you know what I mean. It's very, very interesting. But yeah, definitely give it a go. It's a good show.
That's cool. Is that one season that's just come out? Yeah.
Just one season. It was out. I think it was out in May 2020. So it has been renewed for a second season, which I believe will probably be coming this year.
You'll have a lot of shows to keep running if all these shows get a second or third seasons. Uh,
We'll not talk about my.
your never-ending watch list. I thought mine was bad. Yours is like on another level.
I mean, if we think my film one's bad, I'll just. So I'm currently watching 8 TV shows. My backlog is 29 still to watch, but also my up to date list. So this is shows that are still going, but their new season isn't out yet. Is on 26.
26 shows where you're currently like
Somewhere
they
with
haven't finished their show yet. They're just
like some
ongoing.
of these shows haven't haven't come back in a while. So there's actually some Netflix shows that haven't been given haven't been given new series yet, if you know what I mean, but are still possibilities. Things like The Outsider might not get another series, but at the same time, it hasn't been cancelled yet.
The Outsider. I've heard of that. I'm just thinking what that is.
Yeah, you watched it, the Stephen King one.
Oh, that's The Outsider. Yes. I mean, to be honest, I could have included that in. I didn't even include that in my list here. That's how forgettable I thought the show was.
Don't tell me.
Yeah, because you watched Outsider as well, didn't you?
Was that this
Um,
year or was that last
wasn't
year?
it last year?
Good question. Would have been
We
last
watched this last year, didn't we? It came out last year. Yeah, 2020.
year? Yeah. Oh my god.
Uh,
That felt like 2019. Oh, that's why it was out in January. It was out in really early January.
yeah, it was early on. Yeah, I hated that show. I did not like that at all.
Uh,
In my opinion, best way to summarize it, it's a show that should have been a movie. I
yeah.
just do not think there was not enough material and beef to make it into 10 episodes. And they're like 50-minute long episodes. So you're talking 500 minutes. Yeah. Um, I mean, it wasn't badly directed and stuff. The directing was all fine. Just there was not enough story, not enough meat in the bones.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's all I've got to say about that.
So what's your next year?
The next one is Ozark. So this show, I have watched all current seasons of it this last year. There are 3 seasons that are currently on Netflix. This is another Netflix show, and they've said that they're gonna do one more season. It's gonna be like Breaking Bad, where they split the final season is gonna be a larger season than normal, and then they're gonna split it in 2 parts. So each season's 10 episodes long, and this is the show. This is Jason Bateman's kind of. He directs a lot of it. I don't think he writes it, but he directs a lot of episodes, and it's his kind of baby, if that makes sense. It's a similar premise to Breaking Bad in that it's basically average uh, American, working class American who ends up neck deep in some sort of illegal crime, basically, just like Breaking Bad was. This time, instead of the crystal meth business and the drug business, it is money laundering that Jason Bateman's character is involved in. He's called Marty Bird, and alongside him, Laura Linney plays his wife, Wendy Bird, and his son and daughter as well. So it's the whole family. another big premise that isn't, it's a minor spoiler for maybe the first season. So if you want to skip for a second, um, I think quite a big change from Breaking Bad to this is that actually Marty Bird shares what he's doing with the rest of his family. So his wife knows, and so does his son and daughter,
Yeah.
which I think is quite an interesting shift from what Breaking Bad was. Rather than concealing it from them, they're involved, and in my opinion, what Laura Linney does as his wife Wendy is incredible. She starts to take a massive role in season 2 onwards, and I think she deserved. I think another character keeps winning acting awards for this show, but I think she really deserves one because she's really really good, and this whole tension that builds between Wendy and Marty is excellent. And it's all set down in, I think it's in Illinois. Would I be right in saying that? It's set down at the Ozark Lakes. In I'll double check that if it's Illinois or not. Um, and it's a show that really improves season on season. So I didn't start it initially because it didn't have that big a buzz about the first season, but it's definitely one that improves, and I think it really jumped up a gear for season 3 there. They do an excellent story, some excellent interweaving storylines, and they keep it pulsating. Like it never feels like they can take a breath, given the mess that they've ended up in. Um, but it's not quite on level of Breaking Bad, but it's season 3 certainly was very very good, and if they have another very good season, they could end up with a very good show overall. I do find its weaknesses are to do with. I find a little bit of it is a little unrealistic.
Yeah.
I think they don't fully go through with a lot of their consequences. So actions would be taken, and then it feels like they're, like almost like a plot bubble, where it's where in real life you would have severe consequences to some of these things. And yes, there is some sort of consequence, but it's not that severe. It's almost like um, it just kind of brings you out of the plot a little bit. Um, and then sometimes, like as I said, the kids find out about the business, and I think that would have caused far more hysteria and problems than the show shows it to be. I think just because there's so many different plot lines going on, but it does. I mean, it does flare up with the kids occasionally, and it definitely does have its repercussions. In that, I just think that some of the stuff you would be scarred if you were one of these kids. You'd have to go to counseling for the rest of your life after this scenario, basically, just because you've been told about it all and like how unsafe things are. So definitely one to watch on Netflix.
Right, and when you say it's kind of like Breaking Bad, I'm just wondering, are are the characters doing these? Are they money laundering because they're in like dire situations? Because no, in Breaking Bad, Walter had, that was his kind of, he was dying, so he started making, he had more reason behind why he was, obviously
Doing
at the end of it, he went kind of turned into almost the antagonist. But with these characters, are they like in dire straits for them to start money laundering?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, obviously Walter White was a chemistry teacher on a very low wage, and then he was dying, which also was an incentive. You don't. The very first episode is insane. Like the first episode, they cover the ground of about 3 seasons worth of Breaking Bad.
Oh,
That's how much they cover in the first episode. It's like almost like Whiplash.
yeah.
Um, and you definitely want to watch episode 2 after episode 1. You're like, if every episode's like this, now it does slow down a good deal after that. But yeah, episode 1 doesn't tell you exactly about the struggles of the family or anything like that. There are flashbacks that are in I think season 1, which show you kind of how Marty ended up getting involved with. It's the drug cartel that he's laundering money for.
Mm.
So it does show you flashbacks as to how it happened, and I think they show you enough to get you an understanding as to why he got involved in this. Because really, he's just money laundering. So I think to begin with, he is a step further away from this cartel than probably how close Walter White was to the actual drug making, if that makes sense. Like he was but then things escalate in the very first episode, and they have to move out to the Ozarks. And actually, I found out that's in Missouri, not Illinois. Apparently, one of the line that Jason Bateman uses in the show to convince the drug cartel that it's a good idea. The fun fact is that apparently there's more shoreline in the lakes of Ozark than there is on, I think, all the west side or west coast of America or something. It's insane. But there's some beautiful images and stuff and shots that they get in with these lakes. Um, Also, another big key difference that they do in this show to Breaking Bad is, so Breaking Bad, it's about turning Walter White into Eisenberg, basically this shift in character, and you don't have that happen with Marty Byrde. In fact, if anything, you start to see a nicer side of him as the show goes on. So you don't have this massive shift, which makes it feel more relatable and realistic as well. That, generally speaking, people's character don't change all that much. So I thought that was a clear distinction, and I definitely do not think, what I'm like with shows copying other shows and lazy writing and just copying things. As much as you can compare this to Breaking Bad, it is definitely a clear difference to Breaking Bad, and it feels like it goes off on its own, rather than kind of sitting in the shadows of it.
Interesting. Interesting. Um, okay, so I'll go on with my next series. Coming in at number two is Mandalorian or the Mandalorian. Um,
Of course,
of course, the big Star Wars show. It didn't
when that was
didn't
going to
quite
pop
hit,
up.
didn't quite hit my number one spot of the year. Anyone I don't know if anyone who doesn't know the plot of the Mandalorian, but it's essentially a lone bounty hunter traveling the galaxy, um, running away from the New Republic, or like most Star Wars things, the Republic's the bad guy, and you got the big man. What do you call him? Where is he? Pedro Pascal. If you go on the cast on IMDb, he's the only person in the cast for some reason, and then
Pedro Pascal.
you have to click see full cast. So it is kind of a one man show with Pedro Pascal. Of course, you got Baby Yoda in there as well, the puppet Baby Yoda, and he's in both series. But yeah, I,
Big question. Big question. First of all, do you think? Because I don't think this has been answered so far. Do you think Baby Yoda is related to Yoda? Obviously, he's not called Baby Yoda now. He's called Gorgon or
Grogu,
Gorgu.
Grogu,
Grogu.
Grouge. Yeah.
Do you think he's related? Do you think they will mention that at
I
some
mean,
point?
he looks like him. He's got the ears. He's got the same skin tone. Strong, strong possibility. It's
Yoda got busy at some point. We're gonna find that out, just like we found Darth Sidious got busy at some point to end up having Rey as a grandchild,
man.
and then it'll be all these weird, uncomfortable visuals of Yoda getting busy in that swamp land.
Yeah, once again, we were talking about this earlier. Each episode is kind of Mandalorian going on a new adventure to kind of meet people. The second series, he does meet a lot of the same characters that he met in the first season, kind of bringing back some old names. And then, of course, I'm sure everyone knows now that Boba Fett comes back in this second series as well. He's pretty cool. It's just like Boba Fett in the films, to be honest. And him, basically, for me, I don't think it was as good as season one. I think season one definitely there was the emotion was a bit better in season one. I think the robot they had played by Taika Waititi in season one was a great character to have around. But this season, I think the CGI is a lot better. There's a lot more action sequences. Some of the chase scenes, both in the air and on the ground, were absolutely fantastic. It was stuff you would see in a Star Wars film in the cinema. I have to say, CGI wise, the show was unbelievable. Of course, the big thing about the end of the season is where it's going to go next. We've talked at length about this, whether it's going to be as strong in the third season, whether they're going to focus more on these other Star Wars shows. It's not quite sure,
Also
but
hearing the rumor that it is going to be, so the Mandalorian may pop up again at some point, but the next season of kind of underneath this heading of Mandalorian. Well, I don't think it's even going to have the heading of Mandalorian. It's going to be the Boba Fett for the next season. So
hmm,
I'm not even sure if Pedro Pascal as the Mandalorian will be in the next one. He
yeah,
might be.
well, they've got the book of Boba Fett coming at Christmas next year. Well, Christmas this year. But I don't. That is only a mini series now. I think that might only be like 2 or 3 episodes.
Oh, really?
It's gonna be
Okay.
like a hot,
See,
not
I was
really
hearing that
special, but like a
it was going to be the next one, but it might not be. We'll wait and see. Actually,
Yeah, not too much to say about the Mandalorian. It's just so good it had to be up there. But I do think some of these other shows, even the ones I've had behind it, possibly deserve to be higher than it. Now that I talk about it, that's my number two show for the year. What else you got?
I was just gonna say, do you feel like, obviously we've talked about this, but do you feel like it's restored a lot of Star Wars given how the final trilogy ended?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. I think anyone who disliked the last Star Wars film or disliked the last Star Wars trilogy, every single I've said this many times, every single episode of The Mandalorian, even as a standalone episode, is better than the last trilogy of Star Wars films. And not only just because of you know nostalgia reasons, the way because obviously like most of Star Wars plays on nostalgia. Even the prequels were because the original trilogy in the 70s and 80s created such a big hype for like the 20 years after that until the prequels came out. The entire show is built off nostalgia, and I do think that that was a lot of the issue that people, I know you said with The Force Awakens, where they were just rehashing old ideas. You show R2D2, you show C3PO, and it's just nostalgia rammed down your throat for 3 hours. Um, and the show Mandalorian does that to a certain degree. It has certain little bits in it of nostalgia stuff from the films, but I think the way they do it is a lot more hidden and a lot more. It works well with the storyline, and yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, from what I've been told, what I've read online, and what you've said, it does seem like it's that final. They've achieved that fine balance of nostalgia and fan service. And it's like peppered on top of it. It's like if you're adding salt to a meal. Another analogy. Don't know why I'm full of analogies tonight. If you add salt to a meal, that's kind of what the fan service seems to be like with the Mandalorian. Whereas um, uh, the the final film, Rise of Skywalker, made by J.J. Abrams, feels like you've just drowned your chips in vinegar,
Oh,
or like you've just poured the entire salt shaker on top of the chips.
yeah.
And that's kind of what happens when you go far too much in that direction. But it sounds like it's a nice amount that it's kind of went in. And like my brother's just finished watching The Mandalorian. I still need to get around to it, but he finished it and he's now going back and watching the Clone Wars on Disney Plus to catch up on kind of because I said to him that Ahsoka has popped up before in other, in those Clone War cartoon episodes, and so he's went back to kind of find up on that lore and stuff. So I think it's a really good play, and now that they've kind of announced all these different TV shows that they're expanding, I think that's exactly the right decision to make, rather than franchise content is key and king these days. Like if you're creating a totally new brand new franchise, it's very risky. Whereas if you pick something that everyone loves, like Marvel or Star Wars, and expand a new story in that, so you have freedom to do what you want within that franchise, I think that's a far safer financial um, investment there. And I think, yeah, I'm certainly interested in some of their TV shows. I'm not going to say I'm going to watch all of them, but I'll probably dip in and out with some of them.
Yeah. So how many shoes have you got left?
I've got one more, and then I can't. Am I guessing what your first one is? Your top one,
Uh,
correct?
maybe, possibly. I think you'll know
Wow,
it.
I can't believe you put that top over Mandalorian. I am surprised, Mr. McKinney.
Dave. What's your
Um, I've just one more then, and then we'll talk about yours. My final one is Better Call Saul.
last?
I watched this kind of in between the Ozark seasons. I have not caught up yet. I've only watched 2 seasons out of the four, and I think they're doing one final one. Um, so Better Call Saul is basically a spin-off show of Breaking Bad. I'm not big into spin-off shows, but when you're spinning off of Breaking Bad, then I'll watch it. Um, it is a spin-off show of the lawyer in Breaking Bad called Saul Goodman, and he's played by Bob Odenkirk. Probably most of you know this. and it kind of follows his life before Walter White came along and kind of mixed things up and jumbled it up to be, it's probably as nice as you could put it. And Bob Odenkirk, or better call, or Saul himself, Saul Goodman, he's called Jimmy McGill. So you find out that Saul isn't, that's a stage name basically for him, and you kind of find out his early years as a lawyer and how he found it very conflicting between sticking entirely by the law and kind of pushing the boat out occasionally to try and get what he wanted. And that's what I've certainly seen from the first two seasons, is it's kind of that confliction that he has as to, can you bend the laws here and can I go this far to try and get this and things. Um, Also, Mike from Breaking Bad is in this as well. He has like his kind. Uh, he does bump into Jimmy occasionally in the storylines, but he also has his own side um, storylines as well. I don't think they're as strong as Jimmy's, but apparently they get very very strong in the last in seasons 3 and 4. So I'm interested to see where that goes. And also Jimmy, the other main character in the show. In fact, there's two more. There's Kim Wexler, who's kind of Jimmy's on and off love relation, a love thing. I can't think of a word. Love. His ongoing love. Okay, we'll leave it at that. And Hard, which is his brother, and there's a really good relationship that's built up between Jimmy and Hard. Um, as far as comparing it to Breaking Bad, it's slow. It's a slow start. This show. Breaking Bad was kind of slow to begin with, given to where it ended up, but this is slower again. Doesn't have the high stakes either that Breaking Bad probably had. Not certainly not at this level, but it certainly has that flair. Like you do feel like you're watching Breaking Bad in a sense. Like Vince Gilligan is back creating it and writing it and all. So you do get that feeling of Breaking Bad. Like it's extremely good writing. When I've been watching this with Ozark, Ozark, as I said, occasionally it feels a little bit unbelievable and not that grounded, whereas this show feels extremely grounded, and you get the outcomes and you get the repercussions, and it all kind of blends in nicely, and you go, "Yep, that makes sense," and I really appreciate that. And if you keep with it, it gets better and better. And I wouldn't say after season 2, I wouldn't say it's stellar yet, and it's certainly not very good, but it's it's a nice watch at the moment. But I've heard very good things about seasons 3 and 4, so I'm interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, it's an Better Call Saul is an interesting one because I mean I love Breaking Bad. There were some episodes of Breaking Bad I thought were very slow.
Hmm.
While
It's a
I
slower game, I
think,
think.
and yeah, I know I've heard that about Better Call Saul. It is slower again. Now I've no doubt that it's a fantastic show, but just the idea that it happens before the events of Breaking Bad, obviously it probably is a brilliant show, but it's just not drawing me to it just yet. I think there has to be something. I think I don't know if it's because the character's not gonna die. There's no real like
Yeah.
Breaking Bad, the whole thing with Walter was you knew he was on his way out, and you knew he was gonna. Well, by the end of it, you knew he was gonna go out all guns blazing, if you know what I mean. Whereas
Hmm.
Saul is obviously a much more completely different character, but yeah, I have to give it a go and see what the crack is with it.
I was the same as you, and the fact that I didn't want to touch this at the very start because it was so slow.
Mhm.
And then over the seasons, I've heard from loads of friends, they're like, "You need to watch this. You need to watch this." And I think they hammered me enough that I was like, "Right, fine." And it took me a while to get around to it this year. I said back in January I'd start watching it, and I waited until I finished Dark
Yeah.
to start watching it. And it is slow, but I have heard it gets very good. And yeah, I suppose his life isn't a threat. Certainly not yet. I think the show starts to. I think it's going to hopefully end basically where Breaking Bad. I don't know if it's where Breaking Bad starts or where Breaking Bad ends. I don't really know. But yeah, all the stuff I've seen so far is all a prequel.
Mm.
So I get your reservations for it,
Yeah.
and I'll get back to you on the final two seasons to tell you if it's worth watching.
Okay, so my final show, which is my number one of the year, was of course Money Heist. on Netflix, created by Alex Pina.
Joe Bella, Joe Bella, Joe, Joe, Joe.
Money Heist,
He
aka
hasn't watched that. That won't make any sense to them,
La
but
Casa del Papa, or Mark's, as Mark calls it, Bella Ciao, which is actually quite a good name for a TV show as well. But Money Heist, if anyone who hasn't heard of it, the worldwide phenomenon, it's on Netflix. It has 4 seasons so far. It ran from 2017, and the fourth season just came out there in 2020. I started watching this during lockdown. It was a show I watched with my mum. We took it slow. It's not a show. If you've watched the first 2 seasons, Mark. It's not. It's a show that you could watch all in one day. It's very bingeable. It's
it's very binge worthy.
very
Yeah.
fast paced. It's all to do with a heist. If you didn't get that from the title, I think it has great characters. I think the first 2 seasons were amazing, and I can see how it could have just left it as 2 seasons. But I'm also really thankful that it has season 3 and 4. Of course, there's going to be. I'm not going to spoil it for you, Mark, but there's another heist. A lot of the all of the characters pretty much come back. There's a lot more flashbacks. How they build up the second heist. I'm trying my best to not give away any information for you, Mark. But yeah, fantastic characters, great music, great a great story. I think heist films the heist genre isn't something that I was ever really attracted to, and I didn't know if a 4-part TV series would be able to hold my attention. But it's reluctant. It just doesn't stop, and even at the end of season 4, it has no. It doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. So I think part 5 is going to be its final part, and hopefully they resolve it really well. I was a wee bit apprehensive about Netflix involvement in it for season 3 and 4, but for most of it, I don't think it has taken a hit whatsoever. There was a couple of episodes, I think, in the middle of part 4 that maybe weren't as strong as the first 3 seasons, but the ending of season 4 just kind of knocked it out of the park for me. I think as you've mentioned as well, and we've talked about it, it's all about like you don't quite know how the professor or these characters are going to get out of a certain situation, but they somehow always do, and it's that kind of interesting kind of. He's almost like that Sherlock Holmes type character whose his mind is a step beyond everyone else. He's always like a step ahead, and he can see things before they happen, or he's able to play something out in the way that a normal character might not be able to.
I think the way he does that is like I'm not a fan of Sherlock, the show. I think the way he does that, where you're saying he's a step ahead, it's still not too far that the audience is like, well, this guy's just so unrelatable, sort of thing. Like it seems human and grounded, if that makes sense. That like if you did your preparation right and you were smart enough, then you could do all this. Like to me, I think Sherlock's a little bit unbelievable, just because he's just too good at it, sort of thing. Whereas
Yeah,
this feels a bit more grounded.
no, 100%, yeah. So it's definitely my top show of the year. I think it was because I took so long to kind of watch Money Heist. Like I think we started it in the first lockdown, and I only finished the last episode at the very end of 2020 there. But yeah, fantastic. I think a lot of the acting's great. Ursula Cabero, she plays Tokyo, the main character. Some of the ones, I think I also got in there. Alba Flores, Nairobi, she's probably one of my favorite characters. I think she's a fantastic actress. I'd be interested
Yeah,
to see.
I really like her as well. Nairobi's one of my favorite. Yeah,
Alvaro Mort plays the professor. Yeah, as you say, he's a great character. He's very likable, but he's also kind of
he is very like
he's very if anyone hasn't seen the show, he's very awkward, and he plays the character fantastically. That actor, it's very believable that he.
he's the ringleader of the gang, isn't he?
Yeah.
So he's the one who kind of instigates it all. Yeah.
So yeah, that's my top show. That's my shows of the year. Have you got yours? Have you rated yours, or can you put yours into any sort of rating? What your top one would be? I know I went through 10 to 1, but
I don't rate shows on TV. Or sorry, I don't rate TV shows on IMDb. Just because generally speaking, season to season it can vary, and I've never tried it. But I might get there at some point. I could give you my favorite. I
yeah,
could maybe, I could give you the top ones to watch, I guess. Um, I would say definitely Dark,
yeah,
head and shoulders above everything else. And as I said, might be at the very top in my like top three TV shows of all time. Um, I would say probably next after that would be Ozark and Homeland. I would say both of them are kind of similar levels.
Yeah.
So I would say that would be my top three out of what I watched last year. Money Heist might be just behind that. I'm starting to build up a soft spot for Money Heist.
Yeah,
What
well, I'm
about you?
interested to see what you think once it wraps up. Um,
That was your order, of course. Money Heist and Mandalorian. What was your third one? Money Heist, Mandalorian,
upload,
and
upload,
Upload. Right. Okay. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, some really brilliant shows out in 2020, and I'm excited to see what comes in 2021. I'm going to try and watch less shows so I don't have so many on the backlog. At the
Seems
minute,
very stressful. Your TV schedule, to be honest.
and I'm so slow at watching stuff as well. It's just going to get longer and longer. It's the same as the IMDb watch list. It never shortens. It just seems to get longer.
Yeah, I can vouch for that one. Yeah.
So yeah, that was episode 5 of the film frequency, wasn't it?
Yes, episode 5. I think you're right.